Hi guys, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Gemma here. I wanted to do a video today about over-responsibility. So there's a few contexts in which I experienced over-responsibility. So as a parent, and I mean as a parent you experience feeling responsible for your children anyway, but when you add OCD over-responsibility into the mix, it can lead you to experience unhealthy levels of responsibility. So it can make you feel as though you have to be responsible for things that you have no control over, for instance. So I'm going to do like an example of, as a parent, something that I'm responsible for. So I'm responsible for feeding my child. So it is my responsibility as a parent to make sure my child eats. It's not, however, my responsibility to ensure that the food that I've purchased from a place is, that there's nothing wrong with that food. So, of course, if I can see something on food, or if I can smell, if I can see that something's out of date, my responsibility to check. However, if you were to feed your child some form of, let's say, baby food, for example, you have a baby, you get baby food, you feed it to your child, you cannot then be constantly anxious that there may be something wrong with that food. That food may have been contaminated whilst being created or something like that. I mean, you can feel like that, but the idea is that's not a normal level of responsibility. We're responsible for making sure our child eats food. We, however, cannot monitor exactly where every single thing that goes in their mouth has come from. When we purchase something, we can't say we're 100% sure that that is exactly what it says it is, because we in life have to deal with a certain level of uncertainty. And that can be really, really hard, because when you're experiencing over responsibility, you feel like you have to be in charge of absolutely everything that happens, and there can't be anything that happens that doesn't kind of go by you, and you have to be in charge. You have to be completely in control, and unfortunately being in control isn't possible. We can control certain things, but really not many, not anywhere near as many as we think we can or that we would like to. So with over responsibility, a lot of the time it is going with uncertainty, which feels really difficult when you're experiencing OCD, particularly when it comes to the things that you care about the most, which are the things that OCD tends to go for. So things like your children, your pets, your family, your work, anything that you're feeling a level of over responsibility with. So another example of over responsibility. So I was talking to someone the other day who works with gas. So in their job, they have to make sure the gas is working and then do like checks to make sure it's safe. Of course, everyone has to do those checks because you're obligated to do that. That's part of your job, is doing those checks to make sure that the supply is safe. So there's doing those checks, which is your responsibility, and then there's doing them 50 times, which is completely unnecessary and comes from a sense of over responsibility. So rather than just doing the same amount of checks that, say, your colleagues are doing, you would then do way more checks because you feel like if something happens, it's your fault. You won't be able to live with it. You're a terrible person, in the context of harm OCD. So, if something happens to people and it's due to my negligence, then I'm the worst person in the whole world. I could never live with myself. It would be terrible. And that is a level of over responsibility because no one else is doing it. And that's usually a pretty good gauge. Not constantly checking in with people, how many times exactly do you do it? I need to make sure I do exactly the same as you do. But checking in with people, if, they're not so much checking in with people, so not constantly asking people, but if when you were taught to do this particular job, you were told check it twice and then leave it, then checking it 3 or 4 times would be overdoing it, likely compulsive, and it's coming from a place of feeling an over responsibility of I have to make sure this is right. And the thing is, no matter how many times you check it, it's not going to make a difference to the end result, because, I mean, of course, do it the amount of times you're told to do it. However, if you check it 50 times, what happens if on the 51st time you would have found a fault? You don't know, unless you're going to stand there for the rest of your life and do it. And even then, anything could still go wrong. Things can still happen. You know, just because you're trying so hard to prevent doing something through compulsions, it doesn't mean that something completely different is going to happen. You know, I could be going to the doctor every single day saying, oh, I need you to check this mole, I need you to check this mole, this one looks bad, this one looks weird, there's something going on with this one. And I could be doing that repeatedly because I have a fear of dying. And then I could have a heart attack. So going to the doctor constantly to try and prevent myself from dying through skin cancer, I could have then just died from something completely different anyway, whilst I was going through the whole back and forth to the doctors thinking I had skin cancer. So regardless of the level of control that we try and get due to over-responsibility, the world is still so uncertain that a worst case scenario could easily come true via a different route, or something even worse could happen, because our worst case scenario, the chances are it's not actually the worst thing that could happen a lot of the time. You know, if our worst case scenario is going to prison, okay, would you prefer going to prison, or would you prefer to watch your entire family die? Like, our worst case scenario isn't always the worst thing that could happen. Something else completely different and completely worse could happen, whilst we were just busy concentrating on this thing because it's our current feared scenario. So with over-responsibility, you really have to kind of wind in the compulsions that you're doing down to a normal level. So, you know, realize that, yes, I'm responsible for feeding my child. I'm not responsible for, you know, going through this food and maybe Googling, you know, has there been any kind of problems with this particular brand of food before, anything like that. I'm responsible for checking that gas twice. I'm not responsible for checking it 50 times. You're responsible for the level that is normal around you, the level that you were told to do, the level that everyone else is doing. You're responsible for that level. And even then, you know, you're going to be irresponsible sometimes. There's going to be times where you do things and you think, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that, or I should have checked that one more time. And maybe you should, you know, maybe you fall asleep and don't lock the door at night. Slightly irresponsible maybe, yeah, sure, because someone could come into your house. But you're going to do things like that occasionally because you're a human, you're fallible, and this level of perfection and, you know, being the perfectly responsible person, it just doesn't exist. So it's a fruitless task to try and find. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in our coaching services, please contact phil@ocdrecovery.com. And if you've got any video suggestions at all, just pop them in the comments below. Thank you.